My name is Lyle. I was born in San Francisco in 1953. So I got a birthday, oh gosh, tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow.
71. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Born in San Francisco. I lived in the Bay Area my entire life, up in kind of the North Bay for a time, and then South Bay. We just got two people up there, so we kept moving south and south and south. But my childhood, younger childhood was cool.
Yeah, 0 to 10. Let's talk about that. Let's
Okay.
dial in.
10. Lived in Sunnyvale in California. This is all in California.
This is before all the tech stuff and
Oh,
everything.
yeah, it's nothing. Yeah, it's nothing. My dad was electronics parts. He had an electronics parts store. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and we just were outside all the time, just all the time. My mom was the type. Okay, you're up, you fed, go, come back when it's dark. We had creeks to play in. We had a pool, community pool that we were always at, and we were outside. So I think that's where I got my love of the outdoors so much, because I was just always outside, exploring creeks and bringing home tadpoles and catching lizards, and I was total tomboy.
What would you say, like back then, the majority of women that stayed at home, if they were married and had kids?
What do you mean, our moms?
Yeah. Would you say majority of moms stayed home back
Yes,
then?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was just kind of the way it was.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of any of as a kid, the mom's work. I can't think of one.
Yeah.
But then as a kid, you don't pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Either. But
Well, nowadays it's both parents are working.
Yep.
Kids aren't outside playing as much.
There's no place to play outside anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I went back to that creek that my brother and I used to walk. I went back probably 25 years later to go to the creek just to look, go back in time. And everything's blocked off, cemented, fenced. You cannot even get to that creek anymore. That was our playground for years and years. So that was cool. But then, anyway, we get home, have dinner, and every single night, my dad and I would go play catch out in the street. Lived like a residential thing, and we played catch every single night. I lived and breathed baseball as a little kid. Played baseball, not softball, because I don't know, girls didn't play.
Yeah.
So we played baseball, and I played hardball until, I don't know, it was probably
So there was a sports team that you could be involved, or was it a boys
San
team?
Francisco Giants all the way. We went to Giants games all the time.
Did you play on a boys team, or was there a girls team?
No, there were no girls teams, and didn't even think about playing the boys team. It was all street play.
Oh,
Go
okay.
down to the park with all our friends and play. It's all we did was play baseball. One day we'd be, okay, today's practicing our slides day. We thought we were so cool. Oh, gosh. But that was it. Outside playing ball and exploring.
Yeah.
So, and about 10, I guess, 10. We had just moved into a house at 10. No, everything was good. But my parents were divorced, and I was 14 or so. And it was a nasty one, really nasty. So anyway, got that over with. And
Who did you have to live with, or who did you live with? Mom?
yeah,
So then how was your relationship with your father after that?
I was a daddy's girl for sure. It was devastating. Never saw him again until I was 25.
Wow. So he didn't even want it. Did he still?
He tried, yeah.
Wow. So she was like, hey.
She wouldn't let him take us anywhere.
Oh.
So then it was a court thing. He would sue her, and then she would sue him. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I wasn't living at home. I was not allowed to see him. And so anyway, when I was 20, when I had Kirsty, when I had my firstborn, my father-in-law had run into my father somewhere, and he told him, "You have a granddaughter, whatever." I hadn't seen my dad since I was 12.
Wow.
I'm 25. So he told me where my dad worked, and I went. Brought my granddaughter, and in like Flint.
Yeah.
The rest of the time. For a couple of years, he was ill at the time.
Yeah.
But I had him for a couple more years. It was great. Made it for the last time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really sad. I mean, common themes I find in just interacting with people, it's divorce is super common.
Yep.
And so marriage is a topic I think about a lot. I discuss with people. Maybe we'll talk about yours later, but yeah, I mean, divorce can be messy and it can affect the kids. And I have friends
It
that
doesn't
are,
have to be.
yeah,
'Cause I went through such a bad one with my family, and then later on I was divorced. The most important thing to me was not to do that.
yeah.
We went to like family counseling. I remember the guy said, moderate, whatever. He said, only two things you need to remember when you're getting divorced: love your children and respect the other parent. And if you do those two things, you're good.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. That's what my ex-husband did. It was great. Worked out well.
Mm.
But you have to do it. It wasn't easy, but we did it because that's what you have to do for the kids.
Yeah. So let's talk about your teenage years. It's I do like to try to understand. I have a daughter, she's 8, and no matter what the decade is, we all go through similar life process, right? And so what was your teenage years like?
I just wanted to play with my friends. It was all social.
Mhm.
My grades were good up until that point when my parents split and I got in high school. I just really didn't care. I wanted to play. Didn't really pay attention to much of anything but just social stuff.
Mhm.
Drank once in a while, not a big deal. Smoked cigarettes, stole my mom's cigarettes.
Because back then, cigarette was a lot of people smoked, right?
Yeah, sure did. So,
So what was did they back then know that kids shouldn't smoke?
yeah. Oh, they knew. Oh, sure. Yeah. And then one day she had found some tobacco in the bottom of my purse, like leaves. And then she confronted me. And she said, I really can't tell you much of anything because I smoke myself. She goes, but please don't do it.
So did it work?
No.
No.
Thanks, Mom. Okay. Not in trouble for this one. No grounding.
Yeah.
Not grounded.
That's funny.
So,
A pivotal point in people's lives is when they do leave the house.
Yeah.
When you were 17, 18, 19, did you know what you wanted to do or?
my plan was to go to nursing school.
Okay.
Started at a junior college, a local junior college, and did my first 2 years, got my AS, and then started my third year up in Hayward nursing school. It was a long commute, hour and a half each way, each day. And I couldn't get into the classes that I wanted. They're just totally impacted. Back then, it was really cool to be a nurse, I guess, and everybody wanted to.
Mhm.
I couldn't get into any classes. I was taking, garbage stuff, Phil, but not commuting. I
Yeah.
said, nah, I can't do this anymore. So
Online learning wasn't a thing back then.
online was the thing. Tablets, abacus, stuff like that. Yeah. So where was I?
Third year of college, you drop out.
I dropped out and I moved out. I was still living at home at the time. Moved out with a nurse. I dropped out of school. I started working in a convalescent hospital. And I met a nurse there and I rented a room for her. And I was off to the races and got my dog and moved out into my own apartment.
Did you have dreams and aspirations to have your own family and get married and all that?
Absolutely. I wanted a husband, kids, white picket fence. That was my dream, always. And I did. I got that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So how old were you when you got married?
21.
Okay, so it was shortly after that.
Yeah.
How did you? Let's talk about that courting.
Okay. I stopped doing the convalescent hospital because that was just a temporary thing.
Yeah.
And started working in semiconductor. It was called CAD design, digitizer is what it was. And I started to work at Intel and met my husband there. And so we were both in semiconductor. So that's where our future pretty much took off, being in that business and that industry.
How did you know he was the one?
I don't know, but I did immediately. We had one date. I still remember him standing there. And I thought, I want to go out with that guy. I told one of my coworkers, I'm going to date him. Yeah, okay, you do that. So sure enough, we started to date. But the first date was at Howard Johnson's, and we had our date. I think we went ice skating. We went to Howard Johnson's and closed the place almost. Well, I don't know if it closed, but we talked for hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I told my coworkers the next day, I'm going to marry that dude. I know it. It's just, that's the dude. And yeah, that was in January.
Was that common back then for quick relationships, or was it typical for relationships to be drawn out? And
more drawn out, yeah, for sure. But I knew what I wanted, and that's what I wanted. And that's not me either. I'm not a ready, aim, fire kind of a girl. I'm ready, aim, fire. So, but I knew. I met him in January, and we were married in October.
Mm.
He moved in, I think, in June. We lived together. So, yeah, it was seamless.
I was watching a video the other day, and it was just talking about society today and how people aren't getting married, people aren't having kids. In fact, you need to have so many kids to keep the population growing, and we're not even matching that right now. Mm-hmm. So it's just interesting seeing the mindset of people today, and girls nowadays and guys at a young age, or when they're young adults, don't actually have a desire to get married, don't have a desire to have kids. They're pushing it off later and later. And
I think that's smart.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see if they are able to, if they're skipping it in their 20s, are they able to find each other in their 30s?
Right.
And they're finding that harder and harder.
Yeah, but the thing is, you're not the same person at 30 that you were at 20. So everything changes.
Yeah.
Maybe you might not be looking for that, or with life experience, you may have learned something that that's not going to work for you. Mm-hmm. You kind of pick and choose, and you learn what you like and what you don't, and what you are willing to sacrifice or not. Mm-hmm. But you can't sacrifice a whole lot at 20. It's all about you. But yeah, you start thinking about other things. And
yeah. I mean, I've talked to people who got married later and then had kids. Because they've been an adult for 20 years, their kids can end up really well. Mm-hmm. Because as a parent, you're developed, hopefully.
Right.
And then you kind of know they can be more intentional about their parenting versus when I was 20, 21, I got married at 22. You don't know much about anything.
Right.
And it's hard to be intentional because you don't know much. Mm-hmm. Now at 35, it's like, my kids are 7 through almost 12 now. But I'm glad I had them when I'm young, because now I get to
for sure.
So there's pros and cons to both.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you do wait until you're older, so I guess you pick whatever you can. But
my mother was 40, early 40s when she had us.
Wow.
I had an older sister who was 14 years older. Mm. So she started young, and then she was divorced, married my dad, and then 40. I think 42 when my brother was born. So, and that I think that was a factor. I wanted to have kids. I did not want to wait, although my first one was born at 25. But it always bothered me that my parents were old.
Yeah.
Actually, my dad wasn't, but my mom was. She was old, but he was. That bugged me.
Yeah, with my kids, I still get to play with them. I interact with them. I mean, yesterday I played basketball with them for about an hour, and then after dinner we went to play football. And I'm able to do those things where I would still think with my lifestyle I'd be able to do that as I'm older.
Right.
But it's just enjoyable to do at this age.
For sure. Absolutely.
So married at 21, and then you waited 4 years to have kids?
Yep.
So how was that first 4 years of marriage?
Crazy fun. Crazy fun. We did so much stuff, camping, water skiing. We usually were gone 3 weekends a month in the water somewhere. But we had to stay home for that fourth weekend because we owned a house and things to do. We have responsibilities, right? So we did that. We had a sailboat. We had a speedboat. Then I had my firstborn. We continued that pretty much until the second one came along, and then things kind of slowed down, and we stayed home more because the second one didn't like to do things, didn't like to go anywhere. She was a handful. So things settled down after that.
Yeah. So one thing I thought was interesting about your story, you started owning rentals. Mm-hmm. talk about that a little bit.
When we were married, my husband, his father gave him $1,000. I think, yeah, it was $1,000. This would have been in 74, 1974.
Yeah, which would be like $10,000 in today's money. And
Yeah, right. And he said, here, his dad did real estate. He bought stuff. He wanted to show his teenage son how to do it. Here's $1,000, buy a house. So he did.
With that $1,000, he was able to buy a house.
Somehow, yeah.
Wow.
But yeah.
$1,000 today would get you
Hamburger. Yeah.
get you the window.
Exactly. So we got married. We immediately sold that house and bought a fourplex, the first thing. And then probably about 6 months later, we were in semiconductor. We did well. Okay.
Yeah.
So 6 months later, we bought a home. And then after that, we'd sell the fourplex or sell something and go bigger.
Did you live in one of the units in the fourplex? Or you just, okay.
Never lived in anything we ever owned.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And then just kind of went from there. Then we bought 2 apartment complexes in Colorado Springs.
How involved were you with this, or was this more your husband?
It was all me.
Really? So he was like, go find this. So this was a big part of your...
It was. We both worked full time. When we had an empty apartment, he made more money than I did.
Yeah.
So I took the day off, or whatever days off I had to go in and paint. I did all the work. I painted anything that needed to be done, I did. I took care of all the contracts, the rental, everything, all the business part of it.
Mm-hmm. And you just kind of learned on the fly?
Yes, yeah.
And back then, landlords probably had a little bit more power to do stuff.
They did. But, even with the slum landlords and all that, the whole time when I was renting to people, I was more than fair. Some landlords just give other landlords such a bad name.
Right.
And
that's why they call them the slumlords.
Backwards not to do that.
Yeah. So that was just the mindset both of you had from the beginning.
Right. If you treat your tenants right, they'll treat you right.
Yeah.
And you get good ones in there, and I would have them for years and years and years, and always worked out well. Once, I think I had 2 that were, good ones that I had to evict. But
I tell owners now, if you stay in the game long enough, you're going to come across.
No, of course.
Just like in a spectrum of all human beings, not everyone is amazing. It's just like not every tenant is.
Right.
Hopefully, you can try to screen as best as possible, but sometimes things happen in the middle of the lease.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I had a tenant who she paid rent late, but she always paid every month, and then she had a brain issue, which then she became a different person, and then so it's like I was trying to tell the owner, you can't screen for that. Like, sorry, she went and had brain surgery. She had brain tumor, and now her behavior's different. Mm-hmm. He's like, well, why didn't you know this? It's like, yeah. Why did you screen for this? I was like, you can't screen for brain tumors in your 20s. Sorry. So, so you did have a couple poor interactions, but that didn't ruin your day, or you just realized that was part of the course.
It is. Just kind of cut your losses, and it happened so infrequently. I always consider myself pretty lucky.
Yeah. So did you have other friends that were kind of doing this as well, or other people that you knew?
No, but as a matter of fact, that some people we do know, family members, started doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of cool.
And back then, how much were you buying these properties for? They got to be relatively cheap.
Gosh,
like $50,000.
No, it was more than that.
Okay, so they weren't super cheap.
I don't remember. I'm trying to think the fourplex, what we paid. I do not remember. I know the house we bought was $125,000. That was in Santa Clara. Nice house too.
Like, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, could your kids do what you did back then, today? Or the cost, so the barrier to entry is so much higher now that it's a lot harder. Because if you gave me $10,000, so let's factor inflation, right? I don't know if I could go do what you did when someone gave your husband $1,000?
Well, when I think about it, that same guy, my father-in-law, that gave him $1,000, he put a down payment for my son on a house. And so he's a landlord now. I mean, but he had help.
Yeah.
But to do it on his own.
Because that's what I think about with my kids. It's like, okay, what can I do to set them up for the future?
Yeah.
Because I have a friend who, when his grandpa died, he didn't give money to the kids. He skipped it and gave it to the grandkids.
Well,
And so before they're 18, they couldn't touch the money. And then once they were 18, he just kept it in the investments, my buddy.
nice.
And so by the time he actually wanted to access it, it was over 200,000. And that, just having that money was then his brother, so he has a twin brother. So when his brother got the 100, he just spent it and blew it all in the first few years of adulthood. Well, my friend invested all of it. So it like double, tripled. And then he was able to start a home. He was able to do all this stuff with the money. And so that's something that if you can help a young person out like that, don't go give them a nice car, but go give them an asset that can make them money.
Exactly.
And so that's what I'm trying to think about with my kids. What can I do for them?
Yeah.
Um,
Actually, we bought that fourplex before we even bought a house.
Mm.
That was our main thing. Because, you buy the smaller investments, all you do is sell it and go up and go up, go up. So that's what we did.
Because now it's like if you try to get a fourplex anywhere around here, they're all over $1 million.
Here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I would assume so.
Yeah. Minimum.
Yeah, I'm sure it's like that in Silicon Valley as well.
Yeah, it's even worse now
Yeah.
over there.
Well, the house that I bought, or that I just sold to buy this house, I bought for $220, and I sold it for $1.5 million, $1.05 million, sorry. Yeah. But that was 98.
So in 20 years, just 25 years at 5x, something like that.
Oh, yeah. And
Yeah.
then I had other units in the same town. This was in Morgan Hill, California. I had 5 of them. And then that's what I did. I bought really low. They're 150, 160.
Did you know back then
houses.
Did you think back then these houses would appreciate as much as they did?
Oh, yeah.
So you
That's the plan.
so you knew that they were going to do that.
That was
Because that's when the
thinking.
the tech money was coming in. You got Apple, you got all those big companies.
Right. I stopped working though. Well, once I had my first child, and my concept was to work until my youngest is in school, and I'm going to go do something. I didn't know what that something would be. So that was the plan there. And so I went back to school, and then ended up taking a course in phlebotomy, and that's how I got into the medical after that. So
I mean, if you had all those rentals, did you really need to go back to work?
I wanted to. Well, I was, we were still married too, but I wanted to go back to work.
Yeah.
He had a couple of startup companies and stuff. So, and we were heavily invested in stocks, which helped a lot too. So,
So, how did you get those? How did you feel the confidence to go get those bigger buildings in Colorado?
because we were young and we thought, why not? Why would it not work? And it did. It worked. It worked great.
Do you remember what you paid for them?
No clue. I did not take care of any of that. That was all with my husband and his sister and her husband. They were the ones that managed the units out in Colorado.
So there was a group of you went in and bought those units?
Correct. We paid for it. They ran it.
Okay.
I don't think they put any money in.
But do you think it was like $1 million? Do you remember how much you sold it for?
Mm-mm.
Probably like 5x or something?
I don't remember. The honestly, I don't remember because that was divorce time. And after it was all said and done, don't care.
Yeah.
It's in the past. It's not a factor in my life anymore.
Yeah.
Just walked away.
So just rentals was just always a part of your guys' lifestyle?
Always. When I was divorced, I picked up 5 more in town. So I just decided to continue. I carried on and I just kept. I didn't buy any more after that, but that was my income. I had retired. I stopped working after the divorce and I just took my rental income. That was my income.
Because you'd have just for myself and the listener, you'd have a property and you sold it, then what would you do with that money? Would you spend it, save it, or?
It depends on what part of my life I was in.
Yeah.
Later on, when I'm selling these places, it's pretty much when I needed cash.
Yeah.
And I would just pick one off. Until I ended up here, kind of did a 1031 exchange with the last piece of it was my home in Morgan Hill. That's the one I sold. And I did a 1031 exchange, which means I don't have to pay capital gains.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I bought this place with cash from that place.
And this will be your final last rental. So for 50 years, over that time frame, you've owned how many doors?
Oh, God. Eesh. Does this count the Colorado?
Sure. Rough estimate.
450?
Wow.
Maybe? I'm thinking it was 200 and 200.
Yeah, for those big units.
Yeah.
Was there any significant issues you remember from those buildings?
No, because that's not my business.
So you didn't have to
wash my hands of it.
So you didn't even have to worry about if there was any major maintenance issues. Did you ever have any major issues with the rentals that you had managed? Like a fire or a catastrophic damage or?
No, not physical damage to the unit. I did lose one tenant. She was driving her car and she got in a fight with her husband, and at the stoplight apparently just got out of the car and somebody hit her. So that's really the only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
We just lost a tenant that way, but nothing terrible. I had floods. I've had a flood.
Mm-hmm.
Hot water heater busted and flooded everything. Things like that. But.
Yeah, but to have that, to be in the game for that long and to only have very minor things occur.
No fires.
And the properties that you managed, did you manage them yourself or did you use a company?
Me.
So you never really used a company?
I used a company when I moved from California. I still had a house there.
Mm-hmm.
I was using it as a rental. And so once I moved up here to Oregon, then that's when I started the management company. That's the first time I ever used one.
Mm. And how was that experience?
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Actually, I had interviewed, I had hired a lady to do it. I loved her. And then she ended up selling the business to a bigger company. And
yeah, that's pretty common.
Kind of fell off they didn't care much.
Yeah. Yeah, that happens. That happened to companies here just in this area during COVID, where they would, small companies someone bigger would come and offer to buy them out. So let's go into, how was your 30s and 40s?
30s, gosh. I think I was in school in the 30s. Don't know. All I can remember about that time is we started going back camping. We didn't boat anymore, but we were camping. We're always out doing something. It was fun. We had a fun time.
When did you start noticing cracks in the marriage?
When I went back to work, I went back to school. I was telling you about that phlebotomy medical or lab assistant thing. And I told him I wanted to go back to work. And
he didn't want that?
No, he was worried.
Why?
He said, you're going to meet new people, and they're all going to be smarter than me.
So that was the beginning.
Yeah. And it turns out he was 100% right. Sorry, honey.
But did that
not the smarter than him, because he's a smart guy.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. I'm not. I don't want to do that to him. He's a good guy. But we just drifted off in different directions. And that.
Would you say that's just a normal, like, some people, they look at, there's a gal that I like listening to. She's 103.
Wow. And
so she got divorced after like 40 years or something, because he woke up one day and realized, I no longer want to be married to you. And so the way she looked at it was, I can sit here and be angry, or I can sit here and realize that's just a chapter of my life.
Right.
and now that chapter's over.
Right.
And so would you say you weren't doing things to stay close, or is it just you naturally over time fell out of love, or what do you think? If you go back and analyze, like, okay, these things happened if we would have done it differently, or you think regardless, you probably would have split it at some point?
I don't know about that. It was all about communication. There was none. I'm not saying I'm a great communicator, but he was like a non-communicator. And I remember talking, I said, okay, because we had issues. I said, let's try to work this out. You give me 5 things that you want me to work on or to change or to whatever, and I'll do the same. And we'll talk about the issues that we have and see if we can fix this. And he goes, okay. That comes back, whatever, later. I said, are you ready? I was, okay. He goes, you go first. So I did my thing, listened. I said, okay, now you check. Oh, I wouldn't do that. Oh, God. That's kind of summed it up.
Yeah.
He would try to give me what I wanted, essentially, but he just didn't want to tell me what he wanted. It was just no communication.
Yeah.
That's toxic. And so we just kind of started drifting apart and just not really a whole lot of things to talk about anymore.
How old were the kids when you finally got divorced?
18, 10 and 8. No,
Oh, so they were still young.
12 and 8. Yeah.
So, was that a different? Who was the one that initiated that? Like, hey, I don't think this is working out anymore.
He did.
He did. And then, how did you take that initial news?
I was stunned. I was shocked. What? Because I was thinking, I would have done this first if I was trying to hang on for the kids.
Yeah.
I really was. But it wasn't bad. We'd never argued. Never argued. But it was kind of silent. We were just kind of like roommates. That's what it ended up being.
How long was that phase, the roommate phase?
Probably a couple of years, I would imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's, thank you for sharing this stuff. A lot of people wouldn't be willing to, or it's uncomfortable. And because I talk to people in this stage right now and who have kids, and it's like, should we stay together for the kids? And so I've read about it, and some people say if the environment's toxic, splitting up is probably better than staying together in a toxic environment. Or if it's not toxic, then try to figure it out until the kids get to a certain age, and then you can go your separate ways. So it depends on how toxic that environment is.
And it wasn't toxic. Not at all.
So you probably could have stayed together for a little bit longer. You probably could have.
I guess I would just I think we're both just sort of doing our own thing.
Yeah. How did the kids take it?
Hard. My oldest one, she knew.
She was 18 at that point. So she was
Actually, she had just graduated from high school.
Yeah.
We sent her to England. And she came, he told me then when she was gone. So she came back, and I told her, and she goes, I kind of figured, because there's just nothing there. The kids, they just, the younger ones, they were just sad, So all we did was try to make the transition as easy as we could. We never fought. We had days we figured out our schedules and, trading back and forth before lawyers were involved or anything. It was great. It was fine. And it's funny too, because they've come back, the younger ones have come back and said, because they have friends going through, some nasty divorces or whatever. And many times they said, thank you for doing that, for just making it easy and making it cool. The transition, it was as smooth as it could possibly have gone. So yeah, that worked out.
I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it posed the question, who's the most dangerous man in a woman's life?
Her
husband, for either domestic abuse or could break her heart.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting. It's the most dangerous person in a woman's life
I guess so.
is her husband
At that time, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I never married after that. That was it.
did you have a desire to, or
No.
you're like, I did it once?
I think, growing up through that time, I don't think I'm the marrying kind. I'm selfish. And no, it's all about me. It's my place,
Mm,
my everything. I'm kind of a control freak, not as bad as I used to be, but I don't know. I'm happy with myself. I have a great time with me. I enjoy what I do. I have a lot of hobbies, and no, all I need is, I don't know. I did have, I dated a few after that, but I just wasn't serious about dating. And they wanted a partner, and I just wanted someone to have fun with.
hmm.
I tried that for years, and yeah, I'm done. No more. Oh, I'm happy. I love my life. I got a great life.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're enjoying the life you have and you have family and friends, then
Exactly. That's all you need.
you have enough social interaction. Um, so how old were you when you got divorced?
44.
44. So is that like did you have to, some people go through like midlife crisis. Was that a point for you to do that? Or did you have to like,
I hit the ground running. Hit the ground running. We sold the house that we lived in, the joint house. I bought my own house.
I'm assuming you also had rentals you had to split up too, right?
Everything was sold. Yes.
Hmm.
That's how I ended up buying all the stuff. My homes and my rental units after that was.
Oh, so you were able to start your own empire
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
for that. So that was your immediate, you knew, did you buy homes for the cash flow or the appreciation or both?
At that time, it was more the cash flow, I think.
Hmm.
But appreciation worked well too. So,
Yeah, you got both
yeah,
ends.
the real estate, man. If you can swing it, and if you can keep working it and go up and up, and just trade up a little. That's where there's a lot of money to be made there for sure.
Mhm.
If you can swing it though,
Right.
you need that
I think,
first one.
right. And I just think that the barrier to entry is a lot higher now than it was
Very true.
uh,
It's frightening.
20,
Yeah.
30 years ago.
Yeah.
Because 20, 30 years ago, more people could have got into it. They just didn't think about it.
Hmm.
They didn't know anyone that did it.
Right.
Or now, there's a lot more content out there about it, but the barrier to entry is so much higher
Right.
that it's hard enough for people to just get enough money for their first house,
Hmm.
let alone all these rentals.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I'm definitely gonna make it a point for my kids to get into that. Like my friend he's I don't know, 33 now, and he owns 80 doors, and he doesn't want me to tell people where it's at because he doesn't want
Right. Right.
people to like he's a big fish in a little pond, and so he understands that market. And when the property comes up, he'll go snatch it up, and he's doing very well for himself.
Does he flip them?
He does it all now. So what's crazy about him was he started off as a school teacher, not making any money.
Right.
And, everyone reads those books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Hmm.
And there's like, all right, let's go buy this house for almost nothing. I think the house they lived in, they were able to rent out. And then, like you said, they just kind of worked their way up.
Hmm.
And again, on a teacher's salary. So it wasn't like he was making that much money. And then during COVID, he was able to just acquire all these multi-units, and
Nice.
now he has 80 plus doors, and he's retired, so he
He's
doesn't,
33.
yeah, and
Sweet.
just living off all the cash flow. And because over there it's not for appreciation, it's more for cash flow
Okay.
in the state that he's at. But like there's one where his mortgage is 4 and his rent's 10. So just that one building.
What state is this?
Tennessee.
I figured it sounds like somewhere in the South.
Yeah. So yeah, it worked out really well for him. But yeah, that's kind of.
That's awesome.
But for myself, I look at properties here. I mean, if the mortgage on this, someone got a typical mortgage on this, the mortgage would be way higher than the rent.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's hard to do it in this area.
Mm-hmm. Any area.
So 40s, now you're a single mom. You have 2 kids living with you.
Correct.
But for you, when you got divorced, some people would have been like, oh, poor me, I'm a victim. But I think that wasn't your mentality.
Once the shock wore off, I just was, oh, let's go. So, and that's exactly what I did.
You didn't have to go see a therapist and talk about your feelings every week?
No.
Because I find if you take action, that is therapeutic in and of itself.
Absolutely.
If you don't take action, then you're more wanting to like sit and think, and it's like the money solves problems, right? If you are not making much money in a business, then you have all this time for all these meetings to figure out what to do. But if you're all making money, then it's like, well, just keep doing the business, you know?
Right. I do remember after I mentioned that I was stunned when he said, "I'm out." And you go through a whole lot of self-doubt. God, can I do this myself?
Were there had been blows before that though, that led to that?
Were there what?
Were there like conversations you had before that where you guys were both thinking of it? Really? So it wasn't like you had escalations before that?
No, nothing.
You knew the relationship wasn't great.
Correct.
But he didn't think it would actually lead to that.
Right. So I was in shock for a time. I don't know, can I do this myself? I don't know. I was scared. First time in my life, I was actually scared, and kind of stewed on it for months. And then I thought, nah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go camp and fish. So I grabbed my dog and packed my bags and took off up to Lassen. That was my idea. I was going to go to Lassen. And first night there, I'm camping. I go to grab my clothes bag. I left all of my clothes on the garage floor next to my car. I had the clothes I was wearing. I had all my supplies, just no clothes. This. So I thought, oh, well, I'm going to do a challenge, and I'm going to make it through this whole trip with these clothes.
Yeah.
It was hot, but the pants I had were long. So I cut off my pants. I always carry rubber bands, so at night I rubber band it, and, you know. And I went through the 10 days of camping with just what I was wearing. I would wash it, do a little bit, you know, I'd go to a creek and stuff, clean my stuff. And I came back, I thought, man, I can do anything. And that's when I came back, and my son had just started martial arts. And, you know, I was one taking them, so I had to sit there and watch them all the time, three times a week, two times a week. And I became interested, and I thought, gosh, I'm here. Might as well try it. Mm-hmm. And then never looked back. Both of us stayed and cut our belts. And that was my 40s, I guess. Mm. So, you know, I got my black belt and then started teaching. Did that for a few years until I had some injuries and surgeries, and I couldn't do it anymore. But that was a fun time. My 40s were great. After 44, into 50s, it was great.
Yeah. And what I get from that part of your life, it's just take action.
Absolutely.
Right? It's not like you had all of life figured out in your 20s, and then when you went through that challenge in your 40s, I think what separates people that end up with all these mental issues and heartache and all that is just inaction. Mm-hmm. And for you, it's just take action. And if it may not always be the best or only, but at least you took some type of action, and then you can always adjust from there.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of people kind of get tripped up is don't take any action. They're just...
Yeah, well, they're choosing to be a victim.
Yeah.
And my choice is to not be a victim. So got to be proactive, not reactive.
Mm. And then what happened once the kids were out?
Let's see, where was I? I'm trying to think what station in my life.
Because you're probably in your 50s at that point.
Yeah.
Late 40s, early 50s.
I think I was dating a lot then. Like online, you know, met some nice guys. 50s.
At that point, they probably want a woman that's going to take care of them, and you're like, I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
No, because I was already determined ahead of time. Yeah, but you know, I always had told them I'm not looking for a life partner. I'm just looking for, you know, let's have some fun, just do things. And that's basically how it kind of fizzled.
Yeah.
I was always upfront on it. So I'm trying to think of my 50s. I was still doing martial arts. I was teaching. Then I had some surgeries, a couple of ankles, and then my neck.
What were the injuries from? Just
martial arts. Achilles.
Just the kicking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
It's a dangerous sport.
I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
I had so much fun. I learned so much about myself in that process, things I never knew about myself. And you go through that all those years, and you have the sensei, the owner of the studio, teaches you so much about yourself. And I came out a different person. I really did. Very much more aware of myself, what kind of person I am, what I want to work on.
Did you ever have to use your skills in real life?
Physically? No, no. I've had to, although my training restrained me from using my skills. You know what I mean? I very easily could have hurt somebody, and I didn't. It worked out okay, but I could have.
But probably gave you more confidence just being out in the world as a woman too.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm still very,
feisty regardless.
I need to have my back to a wall. I need to see what's going on when people are coming in or out.
Yeah.
I'm never comfortable sitting in the middle of a restaurant or some with people behind me
Right.
if I can't see what's going on.
Yeah.
I like a mirror if I can see. I don't know. It's just it's a mindset. It's way different. The way I walk, where I walk with cars, and it's weird. Constantly, it's there. It's all muscle memory.
Yeah, I've thought about putting my daughter into martial arts. So she builds up confidence in herself, but then also knowing that she can protect herself.
Absolutely.
Because this world, like I have 3 boys and a daughter, and sometimes my boys, they know I treat her differently. Because I'm like, well, life's a little different for a girl. And as a guy, if I leave the gym at 10 p.m., I'm not too worried about it. If I was in downtown Seattle, I'd be worried whether you're whatever gender you are. But I don't have to worry about it. If I was a girl at 10 p.m. in the gym, there's concern, right? Just things like that.
I heard a thing, I think it was yesterday, they said, if we removed all men asking women, if we removed all men from the planet, what is the first thing they would do? And they said, go walk out at night. First thing.
So we can do some controversial stuff. There's some women out there that don't need men or don't think men are necessary. Would you put yourself in that category?
No, I don't think they're necessary.
Yeah.
I just don't.
You don't need to take one home with you.
Correct. Yeah.
But I think you have a healthy respect for men, knowing that men are the ones that built a lot of these structures and because there's a lot of young girls now who literally have the mentality of, I don't need a man, period, in my life, which is like, all right, that's fine. But men are the ones that built a lot of these things that you enjoy.
True. When I having all the rental units and repairs and stuff that I would have to do, I took the skills that I learned there, and when I bought my house, I ended up getting a what do you call miter saw, and I replaced all the baseboards, all the woodwork along the walls, everything.
Yeah, because that's not normal. Most people, men or women, aren't doing that kind of work.
My point is, I can do that stuff too.
Yeah.
A lot of women can.
Yeah. It's not that they can't, it's just they choose not to.
Yeah.
Like there's certain professions where they're predominantly female.
Right.
And then there's certain professions where they're predominantly male. Not that the two can't overlap.
Right.
So what are some insights that you had picked up as you got older that would have been helpful to have understood when you were younger?
Probably worrying too much about what other people are going to say or think or whatever, putting too much stock on other people's opinions. You get older. I know who I am now, and I know me, and that doesn't matter to me anymore. You know what I mean? It's just, I'm choosing what I'm doing now for me. You guys don't matter. Your opinion doesn't matter. I'm doing this for me. I have the confidence to know this is right. So,
When do you think you unlocked that principle?
Martial arts.
So like in your 40s?
Yep. Yeah. One of my favorite quote, my friends are going to kill me because I say this all the time, but the choice of how I spend my time is mine. And I didn't do that back then, but I'm doing it now. And I don't know if I would even have had the confidence to do that back when in my younger self.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm not wasting my time on something that just, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm just going to say, no, I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not wasting time anymore. I don't have a whole lot of time left.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to waste it on something I do not want to do. Kind of hardcore that way now.
Yeah. On the rental side, would you, people that are thinking about it, what would you tell them? Worth it? Do it?
If you can, do it. Absolutely. Yes. If you can,
Mm-hmm.
get your foot in the door somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But it's tough. Well, maybe they have some help, I don't know. All you need is one down payment
Mm-hmm.
to get it going.
Yeah. What does the future look like for you? What are you excited about?
I'm excited eventually to move up here in a couple of years. My family's up here. My daughter and her family. My brother just moved up a couple of weeks ago. My nephew's up here.
So what moved you to Oregon?
Okay, I live in California. Both daughters were in Southern California at the time. My son still lived in Bay Area with me. And it was just always, the summers were always hot in Morgan Hill. It was hotter and hotter and hotter.
It's gotten worse every year.
Exactly. It's horrible. People, so much traffic, so many people in my small town, which is not anymore. And there's always fires burning. There's always smoke in the valley. And I just decided I'm going to peace out. I'm going to do this.
What year did you
I thought about it for a couple of years.
What year did you leave? California?
2019, right before that.
Right before everyone. So I'm sure you've seen the news about California lately. It's in the news almost every day now. And back to back, multiple years in a row, they're saying Newsom is the number one employee of U-Haul because of so many people are leaving California.
What?
He's built their business. The problem is they have so many trucks leaving, but not enough trucks coming back. So for the past like 50 years, California was always growing at an exponential rate more than all the other states. And then consecutively for the past few years, the population is actually decreasing. Mm-hmm. And not just people are leaving, but big businesses are leaving. Right. And we don't have to get too political, but so the political stuff didn't really seem to bother you. It was just more of like the environment and the
environment. And just the expense. It's so expensive. Mm-hmm. Ridiculous. I thought I could just do so much better in Oregon. Or it wasn't in Oregon. I just want to get out of California.
So, yeah, why'd you go to Oregon? Did you have someone there?
No.
You didn't even have anyone there?
Not a soul. Not a soul. I made probably 3-4 trips up to find where I wanted to be in Oregon. I had vacation here before, but I knew I had to be 1 hour from an airport. And it's pretty in Oregon, and I love Oregon. So made a bunch of trips, found the place where I wanted to settle. I just went ahead and bought the house. Did not know a soul. My family's down in Southern California or in the Bay Area. Not a soul. I was scared to death. I had 30 days to sell my house.
Because that was a 1031?
Yeah. Had 30 days. And so it worked. It was a cash offer. And in 30 days, I had emptied my old house and moved up here.
Yeah, one thing I get from your story is you're not afraid of the next chapter.
I am afraid, but I do it anyway. I was scared to death moving.
So you're afraid, but that doesn't stop you from, again, taking action. Or a lot of people, I think fear is a normal reaction, but for you just embrace it.
Well, yeah, because if you don't, you stagnate. I've always thought every day you should do something that scares you. It could be anything, little, big, something that makes you uncomfortable. Do it every day. And it gives you, more confidence in yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I try to live my life.
So how did you, once you made the move, what did you do to go meet people?
First thing I did was start volunteering at Salem Hospital. And I found a nice group of friends. You know, they're new, didn't know them well. And then COVID came. Out, done, everything. Everybody left. I left too. Came back and then got sick. Came back. I don't know when it. Oh, I was on Facebook and I found a group of. It was a Facebook group of 50 and over women, 50 and over.
No men, men or men.
No men. So I joined the group, met a bunch of great ladies, and that's it. It's over now.
Were they single, divorced, married, or just?
They're just women.
Yeah.
50 and over. I've met some, and they're wonderful, and they're my besties, and I love it.
Yeah, and what I get from that is we're social beings,
right?
And if you are and live in isolation, no matter what age you are, I think that's going to be usually detrimental to your psyche.
It depends on the person. It didn't bother me that much. I'm a very, I'm pretty private person, although you never know because I'm spilling my guts to you. But normally I'm a very quiet person. And I love my alone time. I need a lot of it. So for me, solo time is not a problem.
Yeah. But you still have human interaction here and there. Yeah.
You have to have that.
Yeah.
I'm just,
because there's people,
it doesn't affect me like it.
I mean, there's people, so I did a podcast with a guy, one of my earlier guests, where for 4.5 hours, we talked about basically all the bad choices he made. Drugs, alcohol, selling it, all that stuff. And what got him to get off of being an alcoholic for so long was his friend that took him to rehab was living by himself, and all he did was drink all day. And he literally drank himself to death. And when they found him, he was laying in his bed with a beer can basically in his hand, and he died of whatever. And he was like, maybe I should stop drinking. But that guy had no friends, right? And especially during COVID, he literally had no one. And then he would just watch TV and drink alcohol and drank himself to death.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think there's a spectrum of how many friends you need, where you get your energy from.
Right.
But if you have zero social life, I don't know how beneficial that is for people.
That would be pretty unhealthy.
Yeah.
And you know, with my kids, we have we text each other a lot. And so it's back and forth all day. But I think they're, because I am alone a lot. And they're just afraid I'm going to keel over and die, and they're never going to hear from me. So that's why it's constant all day long.
Yeah. And you got the Apple Watch, and
They got me the watch
yeah,
for that reason. They worry about me. They do. But
I guess that's part of their job, right?
yeah, I guess.
My parents they're not quite 80, but we think about that stuff with them as well, and what that looks like if one of them. It's just a reality of life.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So, so this podcast is called The Game of Life, and how to you can say it in a phrase, sentence, paragraph, but life is ...
Life is how you play it. It's all about choices, you know. You can choose anything you want, anything you want to do, or not choose. But we have more power than we think we have. So, yeah.
Did you ever, a common thing humans, male, female, deal with is depression? Did you ever deal with that?
No, not really. I have anxiety for sure, but depression, no, I haven't been. It's never been an issue for me.
Mm-hmm. And for anxiety, what does that feel like? What is that?
Horrible. Your body is just like, it feels like it's electrified sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, it's horrible. I don't even, sleeping can be an issue with anxiety. I used to take meds for it, but I got off those. I don't like to get on those meds and stuff. So instead of doing that, I just eat THC gummies. It helps me sleep.
So I just turned 36. Any advice you would give to me for someone that's almost half your age, as far as, hey, here's the secret, boom.
Oh, come on, man, dude, that's a toughie.
Okay, so let me ask a different one. I guess what advice would you give to women in their mid-30s?
Stand tall and stay strong, and you can do it. You can do it you can do it for yourself. I'm not going to say you don't need a man. I'm not going to say that, but if you need to, you can do it.